Jesus, I will hide in you, my place of peace and solace. No trial is deeper than your love that comforts all my sorrows. I have a shelter in the storm. All my sins accuse me. No justice charges me with guilt. Your grace will not refuse me. Oh Jesus, I will hide in you, who bore my condemnation. I find my refuge in your wounds, for there I find salvation. I have a shelter in the storm when constant winds would break me. For in my weakness I have learned your strength will not forsake me. Oh Jesus, I will hide in you, the one who bears my burden. With faithful hands that cannot fail, you'll bring me home to heaven. Oh Jesus, I will hide in you, the one who bears my burdens. With faithful hands that cannot fail, you'll bring me home to heaven.
This morning we're in Hebrews chapter 11. As you're turning there, the children can be dismissed for Children's Church upstairs in the chapel. We are going to begin in Hebrews chapter 11 as we've been walking through that, and then we'll move to the book of Joshua in the Old Testament. Let me just give a quick plug before we jump in this morning. You've seen in your bulletin the last couple of weeks, I think even Pastor Stephen has mentioned it, but there is a marriage conference happening in Aberdeen here at the end of the month at Sovereign Grace Church. Dave Harvey is going to come, and he is the speaker at that marriage conference, and I would just encourage you, if you are able, to take part in that. Dave Harvey has written a number of books and a number of podcasts and videos, but there's one book that he has written, When Sinners Say I Do, which I have found really helpful. It's a book that I give oftentimes to couples as we walk through premarital counseling. I share that with them, and I just think he's going to be really good. And so I would encourage you to be a part of that if you can. I think it's, I don't even know what the dates are, August 20-something and 20-something, a Friday and a Saturday. So you have the bulletin in front of you. I don't have mine, so you'll have to look in there. But there is a way to register online. You can scan the QR code or visit the website there. It's really inexpensive, and I think it would be really good. We're going to be in Hebrews chapter 11 this morning as we've been working our way through Hebrews. Even as we've been working our way through Hebrews chapter 11, we've been taking some time just to look back at these stories. What is the author of Hebrews reminding this small church about? When he jumps into chapter 11, he says, "Now faith is assurance of things hoped for, and it's conviction of things not seen." And so then he begins to tell them stories of Old Testament saints. This is the chapter that is the hall of history, or the hall of fame, the honor roll of Old Testament saints, the heroes of the faith. Oftentimes, chapter 11 in Hebrews is called. He reminds us of all of those that have gone before us in the Old Testament who have not seen the result of the promises, but have still trusted in God. Abel and Enoch, Noah, Abraham and Sarah, Isaac and Jacob and Joseph. Last week we looked at the verses that dealt with Moses and even his parents who had faith, and Moses who himself made choices and through his own endurance and his own perseverance trusted in a God that he couldn't see, traded a life of privilege in Egypt for an eternal reward of righteousness. And the people as well of Israel, by faith, were both saved through the Passover and from Pharaoh's army at the Red Sea. He's been walking us through the Pentateuch, through Genesis and Exodus, and now we come in Hebrews chapter 11, verses 30 and 31, to the history books, to Joshua. And so we're going to read just these two verses, Hebrews 11, chapter 30 and 31. We're going to look at those stories and try to get a picture of what exactly is the author of Hebrews trying to tell us when he points us to these two stories in the book of Joshua. Let's read Hebrews chapter 11, verses 30 and 31. By faith, the walls of Jericho fell down after they had been encircled for 7 days. And by faith, Rahab, the prostitute, did not perish with those who were disobedient, because she had given a friendly welcome to the spies. Two verses, two stories that are interconnected, that happen way back in the Old Testament in the book of Joshua. In fact, I'd encourage you to turn there, if you want to the book of Joshua, so that you can kind of look at these stories as we walk through them together. It's page 178 if you're using a pew Bible this morning. I'm going to reference a couple of passages that we'll read. But Joshua, the book of Joshua, comes after the stories of the Pentateuch. So we know Exodus well. We spent lots of time walking our way through Exodus as a church. We know the stories of Moses. We know the stories of the Israelite people that escaped out of Egypt, were led out of Egypt. And they came. God met with them at the Mount Sinai. He gave them the 10 Commandments. He gave them the book of the law. He went through all of that, and he marched them right to the edge of the Promised Land, if you remember, from our work through the Pentateuch. And in Numbers, he sends spies. Moses sends 12 spies, one from each tribe, into the Promised Land. Scout it out. Come back. Tell us how it was. And when they come back, 10 of those spies come with a report that says, well, all 12 of them say, this land is unbelievable. It's great. The fruit that's there is phenomenal. And in fact, they bring back giant grapes, it tells us in Numbers. The land is great. But 10 of the spies say, while the land is great, it's also fortified with giants. We look like grasshoppers in their eyes. It's too hard. It's going to be too much. We cannot go in. 2 of the spies, Joshua and Caleb, they say, yes, there are giants in the land, but God is on our side. God has promised us this land. God is going to go with us and before us. He's going to help us, and we can certainly do it. But as you know, the 10 convinced everyone else that they can't go in, and so they decide not to go into the Promised Land. They disobey. In fact, they rant and rave against God. Why would you bring us out here so that we would die in the desert? And so God, in fact, does have them die in the desert. God's punishment for their unbelief and their disobedience is that they wander around in the desert for 40 years until that entire generation of unfaithful and disobedient Israelites, until they all pass away, including Moses, the leader. There's only 2 that are able from that first generation. Only 2 are going to enter into the Promised Land, Caleb and Joshua, the 2 spies who came back and said that they were certain they could do it. They're the only 2 that are able to go in. Joshua, one of those spies, has been Moses' helper all the way through. We saw that in the book of Exodus. He's been kind of an assistant to Moses. He becomes as you open up the book of Joshua and start to read, he becomes the next leader. He follows Moses' footsteps. He's commissioned right away in chapter 1 of the book of Joshua. God comes to him, calls him to be the leader, commissions him, and in fact gives him the verse, you know it, Joshua 1:9. Be strong and courageous, do not be frightened, do not be dismayed, for the Lord your God is with you wherever you go. God calls Joshua to be the leader. And now that that older generation has passed away, the gathering has come beside the Jordan River. They're just on the border of the land that God has promised to them. They've gathered up to try to go in one more time. And Joshua, one of the former spies, the new leader, he decides he needs to send a couple of spies over the Jordan River into the land to spy it out, to see what it looks like, to see what the cities are like when they get over there. And so he gets a couple of spies. He convinces them to go over. They're going to cross over the Jordan River. They're going to sneak into the closest city, which is Jericho. They're going to sneak in and see what there is. Jericho is an Amorite city. It's not very far from the banks of the Jordan. And one of the things that we know about Jericho, one of the things it was even known for in that time, is that it had large, fortified rock and brick walls surrounding the entire city. In fact, in Deuteronomy, when it talks about the cities in the Promised Land, specifically Jericho, it says that it had walls that were towering to the heavens. These were not small walls. They were fortified. And the spies, in fact, knew that there was going to be difficult for them to get in, and so they probably let all of their Israelite garb behind. They had to blend in with the crowd. They had to find a way. They probably even, Bible historians tell us, they probably had to sneak around quite a ways through the countryside so that they could come in the backside entrance of Jericho, because the front side was being guarded so heavily against this large crowd of people that was gathering on the other side of the Jordan that they probably had to sneak in the back gates. They got into the city trying to get a lay of the land and figure out where some of the weak points might have been in the area. And as travelers and nomads would often do, they tried to find cheap housing. The cheapest place for them to go to was the home of Rahab the prostitute. She was willing to let anybody come and stay there, probably. And so our spies come to Rahab the prostitute, and it's important for us to know that when Joshua here tells us about where the spies went, that they went to the home of Rahab the prostitute, we are to understand that she was, in fact, a prostitute. And that might make you squirm a little bit, but in fact, this week as I'm reading about this story and preparing to come to you, there are some who want to distance themselves from that fact. In fact, I read one commentator that said she was a prostitute, but prostitute meant trader of information, not of sexual favors. I don't think that's the case. Rahab is a prostitute. Her home that these spies have entered into is a house of ill repute. And she is, in fact, a trader of much more than just information. They find their way into her house, but the king of Jericho, some of his own spies in the city, have seen them. They know that they don't fit. They know that they're outsiders. So the report comes to the king. There are some outsiders in the city. They're probably the Israelites. They've come to see. They've come to find our weaknesses. We must take care of them. They're at Rahab the prostitute's house. And so the king sends his guard. His guard arrives at the house of Rahab the prostitute, says, we know that these men have come, the spies have come into the city. They've entered into your home. We know that they are here. And we want to arrest them, we want to kill them, we cannot let them take their report back to the group on the other side of the river. But Rahab, it tells us in Joshua chapter 2, Rahab lies to the guards. She says, yeah, you're right. They were here. They came, but they left. They can't be far away. They snuck out just before you closed the gates. They're just outside the city. In fact, if you run, if you hurry and chase them down, you should be able to find them. They can't be very far ahead of you. Go now. Go quickly. And then it tells us that the whole time that she's telling these lies to the guards, she has already taken the spies and hidden them up on the rooftop of her house, covered them up on the rooftop so that they might not be seen. So in Joshua chapter 2, if you want to turn there, I'm going to read a passage from Joshua chapter 2, beginning in verse 8. It kind of gives us a picture of Rahab. Because Rahab, while I don't believe she was just a trader of information, I do believe that we see here in Joshua chapter 2 that she did have a lot of information. There were people, there were travelers that came through the city of Jericho that did stay at her house and lodged there and shared stories about what they had heard and what they had seen and what they knew about this large group of people that were wandering around in the wilderness just on the other side of the Jordan. She knew the stories. She had heard them. And in fact, she tells the spies about it in Joshua chapter 2. She says in verse 8, before the men lay down, she came up to them on the roof, and she said to the men, I know that the Lord has given you the land, and that the fear of you has fallen upon us, and that all the inhabitants of the land melt away before you. For we have heard how the Lord dried up the water of the Red Sea before you when you came out of Egypt. We know what you did to the two kings of the Amorites who were beyond the Jordan, to Sihon and to Og, whom you devoted to destruction. And as soon as we heard it, our hearts melted. And there is no spirit left in any man because of you. For the Lord your God, he is God in the heavens above and on the earth beneath. Now then, please swear to me by the Lord that as I have dealt kindly with you, you also will deal kindly with my father's house. And give me a sure sign that you will save alive my father and my mother, my brothers and my sisters, and all who belong to them, and deliver our lives from death. And the men said to her, our life for yours, even to death. If you do not tell this business of ours, then when the Lord gives us the land, we will deal kindly and faithfully with you. Rahab has heard. She knows. And she asks for kindness. What she's asking for is rescue. I know what your God has done, she says. And I know that this land has been promised to you. You're going to come in. Our cities are fortified, but we know that you are on your way. We know your people are going to cross over the Jordan. We know that you're going to come to Jericho. We know you're going to come against our city. We know you're going to battle with us, and we know you're going to win. And so when you do come across, when you do take over our city, all I ask, she says, is that you protect my family. Protect my house, my mother, my father, my siblings, all of us. When the Israelites return to conquer the city, just save us. And the spies make a deal with her. They will. In fact, if you continue on reading, you'll see that she sends the spies after the guards have been sent off to go chase the spies who she told lied about heading off into the wilderness, and the guards run after them. She then takes the spies who are still at her home, sneaks them out the window, out the wall of the city, sneaks them out the window, ropes them down, and they say, tie a scarlet rope at your window so that we know where your house is, and that will be a sign for us. That will be a protection. When the battle comes, we will come and we will honor our word. We will rescue you. We will rescue your family. And so the spies escape. They have to go and wander out into the wilderness, and they have to hide for a while the guards are searching for them. But then they finally return back to Joshua and the other Israelites who are on the other side of the Jordan, and they give a report. Exactly what happened. They tell about Rahab. They tell about the deal that they made with Rahab. And so you continue reading. The Israelites then are commanded by God to go across the Jordan, and you can read that story. They do cross the Jordan. They have another moment of covenant that gets sealed again in the book of Joshua as you're reading through and flipping through the pages. And then Joshua has a meeting with the commander of the army of the Lord. This is one of those spots, if you know your Bible in the Old Testament, this is probably one of those spots where Jesus himself, before he's Jesus, before he's an incarnate man, Jesus shows up in the Bible. Happens a few times in the Old Testament. This is probably one of those places. Jesus himself shows up, visits with Joshua, gives him some instructions, gives him some battle plans about what they're to do. And so then we come to Joshua chapter 6. In Joshua chapter 6, Joshua is giving the instructions that he's received from the Lord. He's giving those instructions to the people of Israel. We've crossed over the Jordan River. We're right on the edge of this fortified city. We can see the walls. They go all the way up into the heavens. We're going to take the city of Jericho, and this is how we're going to do it. We're going to gather together our soldiers, and we're going to walk over to Jericho, and we're going to walk all the way around the city on one day. And then we're going to come back to camp. And then the next morning we're going to get up, and we're going to go, and we're going to take all the soldiers, and we're going to go to Jericho, and we're going to walk all the way around the city. And then we're going to come back to camp. Then on day 3, we're going to go over to Jericho. We're going to get all the soldiers together, and we're going to walk all the way around the city. You know the story. And we're going to come back to camp, and on day 4, we're going to walk all the way around the city, and we're going to come back to camp. And on day 5, we're going to get our soldiers, and we're going to go to the city, and we're going to walk all the way around the fortified city. That's on day 6, we're going to go and we're going to walk all the way around the city. And on day 7, it's going to look a little bit different. On 7, we're going to get everybody together. We're going to let the priests go in front of everyone. They're going to have their horns with them. They're going to have their trumpets with them. We're going to take the Ark of the Covenant with us. The priests are going to carry it on their shoulders. We're going to walk with our God. He's going to go with us in the ark. He represents God's presence with them. We're going to take the Ark of the Covenant with us. We're going to take all of the people, and we're going to begin to walk around the city, just like we've done 6 days in a row. But this time, we're going to do it entirely silent. But we're not just going to walk around once and come back to camp, but we're going to walk around once, twice, 3 times, 4 times, 5 times, 6 times, 7 times. And when we walk around on the 7th time, we're going to blow the trumpets. Everyone's going to shout, and the walls will flatten. It's in Joshua chapter 6. Let's read together. I'm going to start in verse 15. They've already walked around 1 time a day for 6 days. But in Joshua chapter 6, beginning in verse 15, we hear what happened on that 7th day. On the 7th day, they rose early, at the dawn of the day, and marched around the city in the same manner 7 times. And it was only on that day that they marched around the city 7 times. And at the 7th time, when the priests had blown the trumpets, Joshua said to the people, "Shout, for the Lord has given you the city. And the city and all that is within it shall be devoted to the Lord for destruction. Only Rahab the prostitute and all who are with her in her house shall live, because she hid the messengers whom we sent. But you, keep yourselves from the things devoted to destruction, lest when you have devoted them, you take any of the devoted things from the camp of Israel, a thing for destruction, and bring trouble upon it. But all silver, all gold, every vessel of bronze and iron are holy to the Lord. They shall go into the treasury of the Lord. So the people shouted, the trumpets were blown, and as soon as the people heard the sound of the trumpet, the people shouted a great shout, and the wall went flat, so that the people went up into the city, every man straight before him, and they captured the city. Then they devoted all the city to destruction, both men and women, young and old, ox and sheep and donkeys, with the edge of the sword. But to the two men who had spied out the land, Joshua said, "Go into the prostitute's house. Bring out from there a woman and all who belong to her, as you swore to her." So the young men who had been spies went in. They brought out Rahab and her father and her mother and her brothers and all who belonged to her. They brought out all of her relatives, and they put them outside the camp of Israel. And they burned the city with fire and everything in it. Only the silver and the gold and the vessels of bronze and iron they put into the treasury of the house of the Lord. But Rahab the prostitute and her father's household and all who belonged to her, Joshua saved alive. And she has lived in Israel to this day, because she hid the messengers whom Joshua sent to spy out Jericho. The Israelites march around 7 times, blow the trumpets, make the shout, the walls come tumbling down. They march in, they save some of the precious metals, they put them aside into the treasury, and everyone else, all the inhabitants, animals, people included, the city of Jericho were destroyed, except for Rahab and her family. They're brought out, set apart in the city, and are a part of Israel to this day, tells us in Joshua. These are the stories referenced in Hebrews chapter 11, verses 30 and 31. These 2 examples of faith. So our question this morning has to be, what does the author of Hebrews, as he includes these 2 stories, what does he want us to see? What are we to make out of the battle of Jericho and the faith that was there? And what are we to see in the rescue and the preservation of Rahab the prostitute and her family? I think there's 2 things. I won't spend a lot of time on them this morning, but I think there's 2 points that he wants us to see. The first is that God uses what is unfathomably foolish to scrutinize the humble and to shake the proud. And secondly, God uses what is unfathomably merciful to rescue the humble and to rattle the proud. So he talks about the walls of Jericho falling down in verse 30 of chapter 11. I think he's telling us that God uses what is unfathomably foolish to scrutinize the humble and to shake the proud. You don't have to be an expert in warfare. You don't have to have all kinds of books on how to win a battle to know that there are no battle plans that recommend a 7-day march around the city and trumpet blast warfare to take over a fortified city. God's instructions that he gives to Joshua, they are seemingly foolish. They're foolish. They're foolish to the people of Israel, and they're foolish to the people of Jericho. In fact, they're so foolish that they give us one of the greatest VeggieTale songs of all time. You know it, right? You've seen that video? We're walking, but you won't bring down our wall. Keep walking, but it isn't going to fall. You're playing to see, your brains are very small, but keep walking. You won't be knocking down our wall. That's a good one. You didn't know that was coming this morning, but it was in my head all week. They were foolish. Foolish plans. Foolish plans that were given both, I think, to test and to try both parties, those in Jericho and those around it. For those who were surrounding it, the Israelites, they had to have complete obedience to God's instruction. They had to have faith in the promise of his word that he would, in fact, bring down the walls of Jericho. The towering walls of Jericho, the fortified city, the towering walls that head all the way up into heaven, they only fall not from strategy, because it's poor strategy. They fall not from their warfare strategy, but in fact, they fall because of their submission to the strategist. We're to see, as he references this story for us, we're to see that when we face insurmountable problems, problems as big as the walls of Jericho, as fortified, as seemingly unbreakable as the walls of Jericho, God's favor does not come to us because of our strategy, but it comes to us because of our humility and because of our obedience. The Israelites obeyed. They did exactly what they were commanded to do, and God did exactly what he promised to do. And in fact, it's even highlighted even more so when you continue to read the story. You see the very next city, the less fortified city, the more easier to win the battle city of Ai. They go to fight that battle, and they're soundly defeated. Why? Because they didn't entirely obey all the instructions that God gave them here. Achan steals a little bit of the booty for himself and hides it in his tent. And it's because of their disobedience that in the next battle, they're not able to win. But here in Jericho, they're obedient. They follow the strategy that God has given to them. God is testing their obedience and testing their humility. And he's shaking, literally, the ones standing on the wall. They have overconfidence in their walls. They have overconfidence in their accomplishment. They have overconfidence in what they have built, and they have disregard for the greatness of God, and it leads to their destruction. Rahab knew about the greatness of God. Remember, she said, he is the God of the heavens above the earth and everything beneath. Our hearts melt, she says. But the others in Jericho, they had overconfidence in what they had built. God uses what is unfathomably foolish to scrutinize the humble and to shake the proud. The inhabitants of Jericho boasted in what they had accomplished and were destroyed. But Rahab, with her faith, believed and was rescued and was saved. I think the author also wants us to see that God uses what is unfathomably merciful to rescue the humble and to rattle the proud. It's almost impossible for us, and certainly as you read through the Old Testament, it's almost impossible to believe that an outsider, a Gentile, a woman, a prostitute, not a trader of secrets, but a prostitute, who's actually made a part of this story because she has a quick willingness to bring strange men into her home, and because she's willing to lie as soon as the guards come to the door to ask about them. It's impossible to believe that this woman, this outsider, this prostitute, this liar, who's rescued and saved, because of her obedience and her humility. We're reminded, I hope we're reminded, that it doesn't matter what you have in your past. It doesn't matter what you've traded in before this point. It doesn't matter what you've done or where you've come from. It doesn't matter what you have built up. That in that moment of decision, if you come with humility, God is unfathomably merciful. And he shows it to Rahab and to her family. God's rescuing mercy is unfathomable, unthinkable. Not only is Rahab and her family rescued, that's pretty crazy to believe in and of itself. That Rahab, the prostitute, her family, they're rescued. They're brought over. They're set outside, it says right away, separated from the Israelites. We can maybe understand that. She was good to the spies, so they let her live, but they never made her a part. She had to keep her tent far, far outside of the city, or outside of the other gathering. But that's not what happens. If you know your Bible history, you know that not only are she and her family rescued for their faithfulness and their obedience in that moment, but they're brought in all the way into the community of Israelites, into God's chosen people, into God's treasured possession, we know from Deuteronomy. It was her willingness to humble herself before the God of heavens, before the one who melts our hearts, that brings her into the community. God is unfathomably merciful. In fact, if you know Rahab the prostitute, you know that she's rescued from Jericho. She comes across, she becomes part of the Israelite community, and she marries a man named Salome, who is the son of Nahshon. Nahshon himself is part of the tribe of Judah and is called a prince of the tribe of Judah. Nahshon, Rahab's father-in-law, is one of the ones that offers sacrifices before the tabernacle at one point. But Rahab marries Salome. She gives birth to a boy named Boaz. Yeah, you know Boaz. He's in the story of Ruth. Rahab, the prostitute, is the mother-in-law to Ruth. Ruth and Boaz have a son named Obed. He has a son named Jesse. Jesse has a son named David, King David, the writer of Psalm 31. Rahab, the prostitute, rescued out of Jericho, brought into Israel. She is the great-great-grandmother to King David. And if you keep following the line, you know that in Matthew, in the New Testament, when you flip over to Matthew, Matthew chooses to list Rahab, the prostitute, in the lineage of Jesus Christ himself. God is unfathomably merciful and rescues the humble and rattles the proud. God rescues obedient sinners to show his unfathomable mercy to those who approach him in humility, and to shake and rattle those who approach him pridefully. God shows his mercy so that we might know we can be rescued from anything. It doesn't matter what our past looks like. If we are obedient in the moment that he calls, If we trust in the God of the heavens who melts our hearts, he is faithful to do what he has said he will do and to rescue. And not just rescue and set you aside, but to rescue and to use you in unfathomable ways. The worship team's going to come and help us as we close this morning. We're going to sing together. I hope you see this morning that both the marching band warriors of Israel and the conniving, lying prostitute of Jericho have faith in the commands of God and are filled with an unseen promise and an eternal hope. By faith, the writer of Hebrews says, the walls come down and believers find redemption. Examples of faith by both the Israelites and Rahab, the Battle of Jericho, I hope give us inspiration. And in fact, give us more than that. Help us to see and know that we can rest in the unseen promises of God and have assurance in the things that are hoped for, and a conviction of the things not seen, through the example of faith set by the Israelites and Rahab. Will you stand with me this morning as we close, as we sing together?
Shifting shadows of the earth, we will lift our eyes to Him, where steady arms of mercy reach to gather children in. Rejoice, rejoice, let every tongue rejoice. One heart, one voice, O Church of Christ, rejoice. Come those whose joy is morning sun and whose weeping through the night. Come those who tell of battles won and those struggling in the fight. For His perfect love will never change, and His mercies never cease. But follow us through all our days with the certain hope of peace. Rejoice, rejoice, let every tongue rejoice. One heart, one voice, O Church of Christ, rejoice. Come young and old from every land, and in women of the faith. Come those with full or empty hands, find the riches of His grace. Over all the world His people sing, shore to shore we hear them
Psalm 33, we read this: "Our soul waits for the Lord. He is our help and our shield. For our heart is glad in him because we trust in his holy name. Let your steadfast love, O Lord, be upon us, even as we hope in you." Amen. Thanks for coming this morning.